If you remember, way back in December, a Somalian fraud was sought. Millions were stolen by heads that were swollen. Now, how could it be forgot? A man called Nick Shirley caused this great hurly, and many conservatives cheered. Why should they do less? Robbery's wrong, unless it's committed by those most feared. To show this amassment is simply harassment of the people of whom God chose. So the wicked behavior of those with no savior must never be exposed. Hi folks, I'm Paul, and this is my take. You like that little poem? It just kind of came to me while I was deciding how I was going to write this. Anyway, if you're not caught up, this past week, YouTube documentarian Tyler Oliveira put out an exposé on the Orthodox Jewish community of Lakewood, New Jersey. And this is shortly after doing a very similar investigation into a very similar community known as Kiryas Joel, New York. These exposés come on the heels of Nick Shirley, who's another YouTube documentarian or investigative journalist. I'm not really sure what he considers himself to be, but he exposed the mass amount of fraud being committed by Somalians in Minneapolis. You might recall the Quality Leering Center, which was just one of the many avenues of fraud that Shirley exposed. I'm not going to go into detail of how these fraud schemes worked, but if you're unaware and you want to get caught up, I'll be sure to leave a link to Nick Shirley's video in the description below, and you can check it out at your leisure. Shirley's investigation into the Somali fraud was widely supported and appreciated. Because why wouldn't it be? Stealing is wrong. It's always wrong. If there's a distinct community that is taking undue amounts of taxpayer money and using it to enrich themselves at the expense of everyone else, that's parasitic. And I think most people would agree that it's a good thing that we know stuff like that is happening. Nick's documentary struck a chord with a lot of people, myself included. The economy is in dire straits, everything's getting more expensive, inflation has sucked up at least 25% of the buying power of the American dollar just since 2020, and taxes, they're not going away, and we find that those taxes are going to a cloistered group who have their own countries, and they don't contribute to ours? Yeah, I got a problem with that. I don't care who's doing the exploitation of taxpayer money. It's something that I have a problem with. I'm pulling my weight. I'm struggling, but I'm making it. I'm managing, but I should be doing a lot better. And someone in my position 10 or 15 years ago would be doing a lot better. So why is it so hard to get by right now? I'm sure there are a lot of reasons. There are a lot of answers to that question. But one of the easiest to call out and say, hey, we should probably stop that, is the blood-sucking behavior of people in these cloistered communities who are exploiting taxpayer systems, welfare, government benefits, or any other system that lends itself to being abused through fraud. And until we address that, well, then the reality is everybody who continues to play by the rules is just some kind of a sucker. A lot of people in the conservative sphere praised Nick's work. It was incredibly revealing of very important information that had been kept hidden for quite a while. A lot of people on the left went after Nick and accused him and the people who supported him of racism because he was talking about Somalians that were committing this fraud. Essentially, it was racist of him to expose the bad behavior of brown people. And at this point, accusations of racism for things like that are totally useless. If it is racist to call out the bad behavior of brown people, then fine, f it. I'm a racist. What are you going to do? Who would you rather live next to? The guy who doesn't like to be stolen from and calls out people who steal? Or the people who like to steal and enrich themselves through ill-gotten gains? If you would rather live next to the first guy, well, you're probably a racist. Welcome to the club. Everyone who saw the fraud being committed by Somalis and agreed that it was theft were all in agreement that it was also exploitative and needed to be stopped. But here's where it gets interesting. Tyler Oliveira did a very similar investigation into a few Jewish areas and uncovered a very similar kind of exploitation of taxpayer dollars. And it should be very easy for the same people who supported Nick Shirley's investigation to look at what Tyler Oliveira uncovered and say, yep, that looks pretty shady. That looks like exploitation of welfare. That shouldn't happen. But no. Oliveira's work was met with a lot of hostility by a lot of the same people who supported and praised Nick Shirley's work. So why? They are both investigations into groups who are taking undue amounts of taxpayer dollars for self-enrichment, but it seems like one of the only major differences is who is doing the exploiting. And it's especially interesting to see the people turning on Nick Shirley for his comment in support of Oliveira's work. Expose it all. Expose all fraud, expose all theft, expose all exploitation. Why would you have a problem with Nick saying this in response to a video that does just that? Unless you maybe have some kind of loyalty to the group that's being exposed. But okay, all right, let's try to portray those people in the best light possible. Just taking the figure of Tyler Oliveira, from what I've seen, he seems to be a bit of a showman. He really leans into controversy. You might even say he feeds off of it. So if I am looking at Tyler's announcement of this documentary in the most neutral way possible, what are the things that I could take issue with? First, I can see how the use of the word invasion is, at the very least, a gross exaggeration. That's obvious clickbait. And the thumbnail, that's a bit on the nose. I mean, the guy with the chickens over his head, I mean, it happens. It's not a made-up stereotype. There are a lot of Orthodox Jews who do that before Yom Kippur, but that's not really what this video is focused on, and I don't even think he mentions it in it, so including it, it's inappropriate. I guess also the use of the word goyim is provocative. But I've been reliably informed by several Jewish individuals that goyim is not a derogatory term. So if I am to take their position and be fair, well, that's not something that I could really fairly take issue with. But I'll mention it. And if I wanted to get really meticulous, what Tyler is covering in this documentary might not be fraud in any legal sense of the word, but it is still a dishonest and dishonorable exploitation of the welfare system. And so it is still stealing in a roundabout sort of way, and I and many other people justifiably have a problem with that. I also could have initially said that Tyler's choice of this particular town to investigate might seem like targeted harassment, like why pick this particular town? But it's not like Lakewood hasn't had its fair share of this kind of controversy in the past. What Nick Shirley uncovered in his documentary in Minneapolis was a flaw in our system that allowed mass amounts of tax dollars to be exploited illegally. What Tyler uncovered was a flaw in our system that allowed mass amounts of tax dollars to be exploited, but legally. Again, both of these things are still stealing. And if I were to do an identical thing, let's say I were to form a little ethno-state within the United States of Americans of specifically German and English heritage, and then organize to have us all exploit the welfare system to enrich our families at the expense of everyone else, would that be kosher? No pun intended. Of course it wouldn't. And I would support an exposé into a community like that if it existed. But of course it doesn't, because of course it's not allowed to exist. Even if that hypothetical community took no taxpayer dollars, took no government support, people would still do everything they could to make sure that that community ceased existing. There would be mass amounts of people trying to stop that community from existing. But that's a topic I have covered in a different video. And the thing is, I am sure there are a ton of Jews who see the bad behavior of the people of Lakewood and say, yeah, that's wrong. That shouldn't happen. But those individuals are so thoroughly drowned out by a ton of people who are saying the very acknowledgement of the bad behavior of this Jewish community is anti-Semitic. And you're starting to see a lot of people react to those claims of anti-Semitism the same way they reacted to the claims of racism when they called out the bad behavior of the Somalis. If it is racist to call out the bad behavior of brown people, then fine, I'm a racist. What are you going to do? Now, there is a lot of legitimately hateful rhetoric and action that is committed against Jewish people. And the same goes for black people. And you know what? The same goes for white people as well. Everyone sees legitimately hateful action and rhetoric targeted at specific people for being members of specific groups, and that's sinful. If someone were to walk up to a Jewish man and hit him simply for being Jewish, I would have no problem calling that out as wrong and anti-Semitic. The same goes for any other instance when someone is victimized for being part of a different ethnic group. But if those labels of anti-Semitism and racism are applied to people who simply address the bad behavior of those outgroups, those labels become essentially meaningless. They become useless. They become powerless. I don't care what you call me. I am going to call out your bad behavior and try to get you to stop it because your bad behavior hurts me. And I shouldn't have to tolerate being harmed or exploited by you in order to not be lumped in with the group of people who genuinely hate you for dumb reasons. And I get it, Jews have been historically targeted for persecution, and that's wrong. But it doesn't mean you are free from scrutiny or criticism when you do bad things. Every group of people have historically endured some form of mass inhumanity committed against them. It's terrible. It shouldn't happen. But just because it's happened to your people in the past doesn't give you a get-out-of-jail-free card. Black people were enslaved 200 years ago. It was horrible. Never should have happened. But it doesn't mean they should be able to do whatever they want and face no consequences for it. You play by the rules, or you go somewhere else. That's a very consistent position to hold. And you can call me whatever ist or ism or anti. I don't care. I am not wrong for holding that position. And there's nothing you can say to me that's going to make me stop holding it. Anyway, that's all I've got for today, but what do you think? Do you consider Tyler's expose to be similar to Nick Shirley's? Is it a fair comparison? Why or why not? Whatever your thoughts, please let me know in the comments below. I always enjoy interacting with you guys. As always, if you enjoy this kind of content and want to see more, I would really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. I got busy for a few months, but hopefully I'll be back to a more consistent rhythm and I can start making YouTube videos more often. Anyhow, I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I will see y'all next time.